Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of The Invisible Men. My name is Ian Rowe.
I'm Nique Fajors.
Hey, Nique, good to see you. Very excited to bring another episode of The Invisible Men for our listeners and viewers. And today we have someone who's built, this incredible organization in Tulsa, in Oklahoma. I had a chance to visit with Philip Abode
You're good.
twice in October and November of 2024, seeing his incredible enterprises he's built at Crossover. Philip, welcome to the Invisible Men.
Hey, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You are the lead pastor of the Crossover Bible Church, and as you said,
hmm
everything started with the church. So
Yeah.
can't wait for you to talk about that. You're also the executive director of Crossover Preparatory Academy, which
hmm
is an all boys and an all girls school I've had the opportunity to visit. Again, we're going to get into all of that with you. But before we jump into who you've become today, tell us a little bit about your background, your family, and when did you realize that race was a thing? When
Yeah.
your skin color seemed to mean something to other people?
Right. Well, born in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and so I'm an Okie, and I was raised by my grandmother, and so my dad is from Nigeria, so he came over to Oklahoma State University, that's in Stillwater, to pursue a bachelor's degree. I think he even went on to get his master's from there. And my mom was, there, graduated from Stillwater High School. They met. Um, I was born, then they got married, and things didn't work out. And honestly, my mom struggled with drug addiction a lot of my life. And so my grandmother was the one who raised me. And and I would say growing up in Stillwater, anyone who's familiar with that, it's a majority white college town. And I would say race became an issue for me. The first time I really realized that race was an issue was when I had my first serious girlfriend in ninth grade, as serious as a girlfriend can be in ninth grade. And
Yeah.
she was white, I was black, and I never met her mom because her mom wasn't okay with her dating a black guy. And that was the first time that I realized like race was an issue. And that was really a string of my high school relationships. Like most of the girlfriends I had in high school, their parents were not okay with them dating a black guy. And so that was probably the first time that I really realized that people were judging me, not knowing anything about me, just simply knowing the
Mm,
color of my skin and not being okay with that.
yeah. And how did that make you feel? How did that shape your high school experience?
Yeah. I mean, I still had a great experience. I played sports and, I was a good student and all that. So, it's kind of a popular kid and all of that. But I do remember like the girlfriend I had my senior year, her parents eventually got okay with it after a whole lot of stuff. And I remember having a conversation with her dad about how I had to prove that I was this great student. Because at this point, I had like gotten all kind of awards and scholarships and all of that, where it was like I had to prove that I was a good guy. Didn't get the benefit of the doubt. And I told him if I was a white kid, you wouldn't have had any issues with me. And I wouldn't have had to prove myself before you're okay with me dating your daughter. Um, but yeah, so it's just it didn't like scar me, but it just made me realize that some folks are not going to give me the benefit of the doubt. They're going to make some conclusions about me just simply based on my race. But I was one of those guys and still am that likes to prove people wrong. And so it was kind of a challenge for me. Like, you know, I was able to, I was a pretty good student. I was majoring in the math, science, School of Science and Engineering at the University of Tulsa, but I was also on football scholarship. And so I would go into some of those classes, with this chip on my shoulder a little bit, like they probably don't think I'm a good student. They think I'm probably here just because I'm on a football
Right.
scholarship. And so I'd always like getting the best grades in class and all those things. So I used it more as fuel than something that caused me to question myself.
Mm, mm.
Well, that's the magic right there. If we could
Yeah.
figure out how to get more young people to use it as fuel, then a whole lot of negative self doubt, we'd be transformed in this country. And I'm sure that's part of the
Right.
work that you do and all the institutions that you've built.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, because a lot of it is it's what you think about, just being sure of your identity and all of those things, and knowing who you are, and if you are secure in that, that does enable you to move through life in just really cool ways.
Philip, just one question in terms of Oklahoma. Today, if you as a ninth grader were dating a happened to be a white girl, would you have the same issues or have things changed?
I mean, things have changed. I mean, it's funny, like I go whenever see my old high school team play. And like almost all the minority kids there now are mixed. And it's like, where do all these mixed kids come from and all of that? But it wasn't like that when we were growing up. But yeah, things have changed. And so it's not how it was. Because I'm 46, and so I was just old enough where a lot of that, a lot of that wasn't okay. But now, thankfully it has changed significantly.
Yeah, that's great.
Got it.
By the
So,
way, you
so
don't look 46. I thought you were younger than that.
Gotcha. Thank
yeah,
you. That's
yeah,
all let my beard grow out a little bit to show some gray. So yeah.
yeah. And just talk a little bit about your family. I mean, you talked about your mom and dad. It didn't work out, but your dad, you said from Nigeria.
Yeah, so he's from Nigeria, he's Yoruba, and yeah, came to the States to pursue education. So he's one of the smartest guys I know, and so it's just academics were important to him. And even though I didn't grow up with him, we would have conversations and stuff, and so I knew school was important. But my grandmother, she only had a seventh grade education, but I knew that I couldn't get in trouble in school. And she set those expectations
Mm,
that I had to make good grades to be able to play sports and all of those things. And she kept me in the church. And so she was a God-fearing woman. So going to church growing up was not optional for me at all. Um, but yeah, so she did the best she could with what she had. I didn't get in a lot of trouble growing up because it's Stillwater, Oklahoma, so it wasn't like gang issues or anything like that. And I always tell folks I was a product of a good school system because I didn't feel the pressure to not do well in school. And yeah, I had some folks tell me I talked white or just that can happen as an African American where you doing well is like, oh, you're trying to act white or anything like that. But the school I was at, the students who succeeded were celebrated. And I was a very competitive guy. And so I wanted to be at the top of the class and I wanted to be the best in everything I did.
wow. And okay, so then, so what you studied, you said science and engineering in college?
Well, yeah, my undergrad was applied math. So I graduated a degree in applied math and a minor in economics.
Got it. And then what
Yeah.
happened?
And so, well, really, and I can kind of tell the story because I came to faith in college. And so, even though, I grew up going to church, all that stuff, it was, like I said, it wasn't my choice. And so, really, when I went to college, it was the first time where I didn't have to go to church. I didn't have to really pursue faith. And then, really, at that point, I consider myself an agnostic. I'm like, if you're going to take yourself seriously as a smart person, you can't take things of faith all that seriously and all of that. But when you get to college and you're trying to figure out who you are, and I went through an identity crisis where it was like football, the thing that was a big part of my identity was being a football player. Well, I find myself as, struggling and I'm a bench warmer for the first time in my life. And academically, there were some struggles there. And even just my relationship with the ladies, there were struggles that really caused me to think back to who I was. And a friend had like recently shared the gospel with me. And it was like hearing that presentation, and he had this cool illustration that laid it out, really helped me realize that, like, I'm really not a Christian. I might tell people I'm a Christian, but it's like I'm not because I've never really put my faith in Christ. And as I'm going through this crisis, I started just thinking about my life and how I got to where I was, and really just seeing how, like, God was there in the background, making sure I had everything I needed to have. Because even though my dad wasn't there, I had some really cool mentors. And my grandmother, we're welfare, the whole nine. But like when my high school football team made it to the state semifinals, one of my friend's parents bought cleats for me. And so we just had all these people helping me out. And it was because they saw this, widowed grandmother raising her kids and like, man, we want to help this lady out. And so I was like, God gave me everything that I needed to get to where I was in life. And so that was the point where I was like, there's just too many things that worked out just right for it to be a coincidence. And it was at that point where I was like, man, I'm giving my life to Christ. And so I went all in on that, really had a heart for ministry at that point. And one of my teammates who grew up in North Tulsa, which is the African American part of town, shared with me and my girlfriend, who eventually became my wife, that he wanted to start a church in North Tulsa. And so I was like, yes, we want to be a part of that. And so right after college graduation, 2 weeks after graduation, my wife and I got married. A month after that, we moved down to Dallas to go to Dallas Theological Seminary. And then we were down there for 3 years preparing to start Crossover Bible Church. And so there were two of us when we started the church. And really what put us on this trajectory of taking a more comprehensive approach is I remember like in seminary, one of the questions that folks would float around as they're challenging all of us who are getting ready to go into ministry is that if your church were to close its doors, never to open them again, would anybody in your community notice?
Mm.
And that really resonated with me because it's like I wanted to be a part of a church that was making a tangible difference in its community. And so it's like, the Black church had a great legacy of being like the pillar of community, especially during the civil rights movement. And I felt like, the church had lost its voice. And so we wanted to be a part of a church that was making that difference. It's just, we didn't really know what that looked like. And so we got there about 3 years in, just trying to figure out different things. Had got exposed to this organization called the Christian Community Development Association that has this unique philosophy of ministry saying that, hey, if you're going to be in an under-resourced community, you should live in that community. And so we moved into North Tulsa. And so, there, it's like living in the community is the best way to change the language from they and them to we and us. And so it's like we lived in the community. And it was like taking this approach and getting involved in coaching youth sports, honestly, was a big thing. So we met at a community center and we were just trying to figure out how to get people to come to church. And the guy, we both played football together. And so we're like, hey, let's just help coach one of the football teams at this community center. And so the day before practice started, we found out we were the only two coaches. I thought I was just going to help out like once a week or something. And so here we are with this group of third graders. I'm learning how to coach, and we won the league championship that year, which was really cool. But then we also realized that God had dumped this tremendous ministry opportunity in our laps because these kids were third graders, but you could already see like, man's a good kid, but if he doesn't do something about his attitude, his emotional, just didn't have any emotional control, like I can see where this leads. Some of them are already failing in school. Several of them, their dads were in prison. We had two kids on that team whose dads had already been murdered. And so we're like, man, if these families never come to our church, we're going to at least do something to help these kids. So we started talking about character practice. We started after school tutoring on the days that we had practice. And what we noticed was that the family started letting us into their lives. They saw that we cared about their kids more than what they could do on the field, but just in life. And I always say I got to have more conversations in the community as Coach Phillip than I ever get to have as Pastor Phillip. And that really set the tone for how we were going to more comprehensively engage in ministry in our community. And so we went through a pastoral transition in 2009. So I became the lead pastor. And then a couple of years after that, we started with just youth sports program. And so I started with the second grade football team. And so I coached that football team and we won the league championship that year too. And so we just kind of grew from there from a one football team to then doing sports year round, basketball, baseball, track. And then we started an after school program in summer day camp. And then the unique thing about that was that we hired high schoolers to work as the tutors and mentors in that program. So then it became a youth jobs program. And so they're called street leaders. And then from there, we started a medical clinic that wasn't a free clinic. It was a family clinic because in our community, for every one doctor in North Tulsa, there were 26 in Midtown. And so it was like
Mm.
significant access to healthcare disparities, and the life expectancy gap was 14 years difference. And so we wanted to comprehensively serve in that way. And so we started a medical clinic, and then we started a development company that built and remodeled homes. So my ministry partner and I, the guy who started our nonprofit, Crossover Community Impact, we drove through this neighborhood and there were over 30 boarded up homes. And so we started trying to acquire those homes and fixing them up so that anyone from our church who wanted to move into the community, any of our staff who wanted to move into the community, or to help promote first-time home ownership. And so we'd do that. And then in 2017, we started Crossover Preparatory Academy, our all boys school, to really address just the significant black male crisis in education. You know, black boys are at the bottom of almost every educational statistic. And I've always said that if you want to have strong communities, you got to have strong families. And if you want to have strong families, you got to have strong men. And so we really wanted to start a school that's going to come alongside these young men and really walk with them through life to help them be the men that God created them to be. And then we shortly after that, we started our girls' school. And so those are like all the different things that we started. And
Oof.
then just a year ago, we're able to move it all into one central location. We built a community center. And so our school meets here, our church meets here, and it's like a fitness center. So folks from the community can get like a $15 a month fitness membership to, help promote a healthy lifestyle. And so,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. I know that's a lot, but yeah, that's kind of what we do at Crossover.
So how many hours a week do you put in, Philip? You don't get this done working part-time. This is no
Right.
side hustle.
Right. Well, I mean, God's blessed us with a great team of folks. One of our sayings here is that God does the heavy lifting. And yeah, we just have a great team of folks who believe in what we're doing, like our executive director of our nonprofit. We met through a mutual friend, and when we started it, he went to Harvard to get a master's in urban planning. And so, nonprofits like ours don't have, you know, guys from Harvard with master's degrees. Our principal at our boys' school had his PhD in educational leadership before he was 30 years old. So it's like God has just blessed us with a great team of folks. And so a lot of times I'm just like kind of just quarterbacking it all. We got a lot of great folks. And, during football season, I put in a little more hours than normal because I'm the head football coach for our high school team. But I try to have a good balance. 6 o'clock, I'm pretty much shutting things down, spending time with my family. And my wife works in our organization, so she's our director of development, and her office is literally next door to mine. So it's real fun. It's like a family business for us.
I was going to ask you, as I looked at the pillars of your operations, and I saw that sports and athletics was a key pillar. Of
Yeah,
course, you've answered that question because you are an athlete. You were
right.
an athlete, and so I understood that fundamentally. But how important is it to get to the youth in ways that resonate with them?
Yeah, yeah. That's a great question. Well, part of this philosophy of ministry called Christian community development is you listen to the community, and that happens when you live in the community, but you also like, what are the community strengths? Like what is already
Mm.
going on there? And youth sports is huge in North Tulsa. Like there's just a legacy of just great athletes coming out. And so we wanted to start a youth football program and just do it in a different way. Like you can have guys that are like cussing out third graders and fourth graders. And so folks would bring their kids to us because like, hey, these are some good, solid guys that don't cuss at my kid. But we were able to start with something that was already a strength and that people are already doing and building credibility. So when we opened up our clinic, people are like, Crossover, is that football team? So we already had like
Mm.
some name
Mm.
recognition and goodwill in the community just because of our sports program. And really, when we started our school, we started in seventh grade. And anyone who started a school knows it's hard to recruit to a school that doesn't exist. And so we're sitting there meeting with all these families, and that first group of kids, the core boys that we had were guys that I had been coaching since the second grade. And so we had
Wow.
families in the meeting. They're like, man, I'm bringing my kid because I know you and that you care and I trust you. And then some of the other kids are like, we played against y'all, and so we want to come to your school and stuff. And so yeah, so we started with something that, yeah, I knew football, but it was also a strength in our community.
That's a powerful best practice. That is really, I asked this question to just a few people, but you're an appropriate person to ask. So, if someone wrote a $5 billion check to you and your team, where would you invest those dollars for maximum impact?
Mm. $5 billion check. Wow, that's, I mean, oof. I mean, we'd set up an endowment so we don't have to spend so much time raising money because that's, so much of our time. Literally, I just got out of a meeting with my wife and our executive director for nonprofit, just the fundraising and all of that goes. So we would finish building out phase 2 of the community center, do some infrastructure stuff, and then everything left over in endowment. So that way we can spend more time just doing the work.
Hmm. Yeah, when I saw everything that Philip has created, it's just it does come from this bedrock faith that you have, and Nike. It's also Philip took me around. Most people don't know you're just a few miles away from Black Wall
Yeah,
Street,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
talk about that this juxtaposition because most people know Black Wall Street, obviously the Tulsa massacre, but what people don't realize was that before the Tulsa massacre,
Right.
during Jim Crow segregation, you had black entrepreneurs who were raising capital, who were building wealth, creating these businesses, created Black Wall Street,
Mm.
high levels of reading. I mean, so it's quite extraordinary. So so how do you use that history, Philip, even in your school? That it's quite a
Yeah.
source of pride, even though it's simultaneously the location of one of the most horrific massacres in American history.
Right, right. I mean, yeah, I was a senior in college before I learned anything about Black Wall Street and what happened. And I was born and raised in Oklahoma. And yeah, it was, the most thriving African American community in the country. And overnight it was destroyed. And one of the things that was always a source of frustration for me, because I feel like our city has never healed from that. So Tulsa can be, it's a fairly divided city. It's gotten, things have gotten better. So I want to say things have gotten a lot better in the last few years, but there's a lot of mistrust between North Tulsa and the rest of the city. But one of the things that was always a source of frustration for me is that when you would hear the story about Black Wall Street and all of that, a lot of folks would be like, that's why North Tulsa is struggling the way it is now. And I felt like it kind of diminished the survivors and all of that because Black Wall Street was rebuilt and thriving again within like five
Right,
years after
right.
that massacre. And so it was like, no, like our people are way more resilient than what we're giving them credit for. And, all the grit and all those things. And so it was like, yes, Black Wall Street was thriving again. And really, the downfall of North Tulsa was more complicated than that. Ironically, you could argue that desegregation had more to do with the downfall of North Tulsa than anything, because all of the leaders and the entrepreneurs and all that stuff, they left the community. And so that's why one of the distinctives of our organization is that our full-time staff are required to live in North Tulsa. And it's like,
Wow.
we really mean that this is our community. And it's like, so that's our big thing, is restoring our community. So that's like every single one of our mission statements has that. And it's like, we want that to be literally true for us. And even at our school, and, a typical nonprofit is trying to help kids escape the hood and all of that. We're like our school, our mission statement is restoring our community by developing educated, godly young men and women who love North Tulsa. And so we try to cast that vision. It's like, we want you guys to come back and to lead in our community. And it's like, you guys are the future of seeing North Tulsa be great again. And so we don't have a ton of conversations about the injustices of the race riot or anything like that, but we're letting our kids know that you guys are those future leaders of our community and you guys can come. And so it's not like, hey, get the big house and move out to the suburbs or try to move to Dallas or Atlanta. It's like, no, you guys can be what makes North Tulsa great again.
I mean, I saw it. I saw it. And so what's next? And the point, by the way, about all the residents having to all the staff members having to live in North Tulsa. I mean, Philip created a housing company to refurbish homes so that every, you've created a mechanism to fulfill this vision, which is just really powerful. How is all of this? How is all of it financed? And then
Yeah.
how is the church central to all of these efforts?
Yeah, no, great questions. That's one of the reasons why we say God does the heavy lifting, just in just how some of the funds have come in, just different miraculous stories of, us doing $1 million land swap by paying $110,000 for 42 acres of land, and then we swapped it, and now we have a clinic. So just different stories like that. But God has brought some high capacity donors who believe in what we're doing and our approach. And then our state has, especially at the school, our school is our biggest fundraising challenge. Our budget, I want to say it's like $4 million this year. But our state has a very great tax credit program. So when folks give
Mhm.
for students to get scholarships, they get 75% of that donation back in a state tax credit. And companies can get almost $100,000 back. And so it's a lot of it is making sure folks understand how the program works. Because once they understand it, they're like, why wouldn't you give? But it just takes a lot of work to even get that. Um, but yeah, so just different foundations. We have the George Kaiser Family Foundation is a great partner of ours. He's a billionaire who took the Given Pledge and really cares about our community. And so just some of those different partnerships and relationships. But as far as the church goes, it really is at the center of it all. For us, it's like we want to see gospel restoration in our community because that at the heart of it is our broken relationship with the Lord. And so seeing that restored, that changes your why. Like for me in college, I was completely lost, aimless, all that. But then soon as I gave my life to the Lord and all of that, that changed the why. I went from being a very reckless person, just living a bunch of self-destructive stuff, but then now it's like I want to please God in everything I do. And it changed my choices in a lot of ways. And so for us, we want to, a lot of the things we do is like gives us the opportunity to build relationships with folks that we wouldn't normally get to build relationships with. Because it's like, it's one thing to throw like a great Sunday morning program, but it's like, that's only going to reach people that are actually wanting to go to church or actually looking for a church home. But it's like, how do you reach folks that have no interest in going to church? Well, you love folks. And so the great commandment is to love God and to love people. And we always say that the great commandment paves the way for the great commission, which is Jesus telling folks to go and make disciples. And so by us tangibly loving and serving our community, meeting real needs, like our schools aren't doing, like our kids are struggling in our schools. And so that's a real need. The clinics are real needs. So we want to meet real needs but do it in relational ways. And to help, we don't do a lot of handout stuff, like food pantry, things that, those things are needed, but there's already organizations doing that. We focus on development. We want to come alongside, that old saying that if you give someone a fish, you feed them for a day,
Mhm.
but if you teach them how to fish, you feed them for a lifetime. And so we want to help teach people how to fish and then eventually own their own ponds. And so
Mhm.
that's where it's like we want to come alongside folks. Folks have a ton of capacity and potential because we believe everyone is created in the image of God. And so the church is all about helping people see what an authentic relationship with God looks like day to day. Not that any of us are perfect, but it's like God will empower you to live the kind of life that He's created you to live. And so we want to
Wow.
create a picture of that. And it's cool when you see it all come together. Like just this past Sunday, one of our seniors at our school, who's been a student at the school for since he was in the seventh grade, got baptized. And it was just through some of the relationships with staff and all of that, he got to the point where he's like, yeah, I want to give my life to Jesus. And he's getting ready to graduate and go to trade school and embark on life. And so, yeah, it's cool when you see that stuff all work and come together by us
Mm.
providing this young man with a great education, but then the relationships are really what changes people.
Brilliant. Well, Philip, we have a segment of the show that we call the speed round, where I'm going to
Okay.
put in front of you a couple of names, ask you to
Okay.
pick one, tell our audience why you made that choice,
Okay.
and we'll keep it moving. So, the first two names are Malcolm or Martin.
Uh, that's a tough one. I would go Malcolm. And I know you're like, wait, but you're a Christian and all that. Why did you pick Malcolm? So it's like theologically, I'm with Martin, but just I you can't take away anything that Martin Luther King stood for, peace and just his approach and all of that. But as a Christian, as a pastor, I struggle with some of the things that have come to light about his morality, where I really respect, even though I disagree with Malcolm on some of his approach and all that, I respected the integrity and the kind of man he was a little more. And so I know it's a little nuanced, but yeah,
No,
I
that's
just struggle with, just the pastoral profession doesn't have a lot of credibility. And it's stuff like that, where great message, great speaker, but behind closed doors, he was a different person.
and my understanding is that January 31st, 2027, the
Right,
FBI will be releasing all of their audio files about Martin Luther King behind closed doors.
right,
And I've been thinking about what impact that's, because I've read the reports, and
right,
as you have, Philip, clearly, it's people won't like this comment, but you think you're reading something about Diddy when you
right.
read some of these audio reports about Martin Luther King. So, powerful statement you made there. Very powerful. We're going to go to football.
Okay.
Um, Jim Brown or Barry Sanders?
Oh, Barry Sanders. That's easy.
Ooh.
That's
I
easy.
know.
I
You
mean,
just killed Nike.
right, I'm sorry, like, Jim Brown was before my time. Barry Sanders went to Oklahoma State University, and so I was like, and he retired too early. Like he would be hands down the GOAT of running backs had he not retired when he did. But you can't take anything away from Jim Brown, but Barry Sanders, like
I
just the
love it. I
highlights.
love it.
Yeah.
Oklahoma,
Elon Musk or
Oklahoma.
Steve Jobs? Oh, what's that, Ian?
No, no, Barry Sanders, Oklahoma State. I mean, Philip couldn't go
Yeah.
against his
No, I
his, his
get
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
No,
Heisman Trophy winner,
absolutely.
all of
I
that.
made it
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
Elon Musk or Steve Jobs?
Oh man. Um, I say Steve Jobs just because I use Apple stuff and I've never driven a Tesla, so and don't have any plans, but I'm Apple all the way.
And for the last one, oh boy. Well, Marcus Garvey or W.E.B. Du Bois?
Hmm. Jeez. I wish you would have said Booker T because that'd have been easy because I'd have went with
I
Booker T.
know.
Washington. Um, yeah. I, yeah, I don't I really can't choose either one, honestly, because they were both, if correct me if I'm wrong, but like both of them were like kind of separationists and wanting to like go back to Africa type of deal. Or
It depended on which phase of their life
yeah,
you looked at. I
yeah,
mean, Du
yeah.
Bois at 90 moved to Africa.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I mean, I'm a Garveyite. I don't like to put my bias into these things. I mean, he was not so much back to Africa as much as self-reliance.
Okay,
Frankly, a lot of the principles that you've delivered tenfold in Oklahoma are really
yeah.
Garvey principles.
Okay, cool, cool. Well, I will interject one and say Booker T. Washington because I read his book Up from Slavery, and I was just amazed by. I felt like he was before his time in the sense of, it was like, man, things were really bad racially where you could do a lot of things right, and the deck was just stacked still so hard against you, right? But today, I'm like, man, if we take care of ourselves and execute and do well, like there's all kinds of opportunities there for us. And so it's like
Mm.
his message today is desperately needed for our folks. And so yeah, I'm more of a Booker T. Washington guy.
Yeah. Well,
You've
here,
certainly
here.
delivered on his vision. Yeah, I've read his
Yeah.
book as well, and all the
Yeah.
pieces of what you've built. It's incredible. Thank you.
Yeah, well, before we get to our final question where I ask you advice for Daryl, I do want to give you, Philip, an opportunity to talk about some of the rituals that you've created
Mm,
at
yeah.
Crossover. As someone who runs schools, our students every day, they recite the preamble to the Constitution. They recite
Yeah.
poetry like Invictus, these poems, just I am the captain of my soul. And when I was visiting your school, I was in awe just some of the things that you could tell that this is what creates the glue. So talk about
Right. Right.
even the morning session
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how you check attendance. Just talk a little bit about that and illuminate
Yeah.
that, paint that picture
Cool.
for our viewers.
Yeah, and I want to give credit to St. Benedict's Prep up in Newark, New Jersey, because a lot of stuff we do, we find best practices, and they have this amazing student leadership culture. And so we wanted to replicate that. And culture is everything, and to create culture is hard. And so for us, we have a daily convocation. And in that convocation, it's a student-led assembly. So the entire school is there. Our boys have a separate convocation. Our girls have a convocation. And the students take attendance. And so we divide our school up into teams. And they compete on 4A's. We call it the 4A score. So academics, attendance, attitude, and extracurricular activity involvement. And so at convocation, they're taking the attendance. And our school motto at our boys' school is, I am my brother's keeper. And so when you're taking attendance, the president will ask, call out the different teams and they'll tell where everybody is on their team. So it'll be like, is everyone present? No. Okay, so and so's absent on the way. So and so was tardy. So and so is a no call, no show. And there's consequences if you don't call in and let your team leader know where you're at. And so we do that. We have that attendance is taken there. So the official school attendance is taken by our students. Then we do a catechism. And so just learning the teachings of the Christian faith. And so they'll have a question and answer deal like, who is God? And then the group will read answering that question, sing a praise song, read a scripture together, sing a praise song, and then, announcements. And then we'll do like shout outs. So we encourage each other. And it's cool. Like today, there's several shout outs, like the kid that got baptized. So folks shouted him out. Other folks shouted out everyone who came to see him get baptized. Our middle school basketball team they were runner ups in their league championship. And so there were shout outs for that. And so students and staff will shout out each other for just good things they see each other doing. And then we end the day with there'll be a spotlight or a highlight of something. And then we'll say our school motto. And so then we'll say the Latin version of it, I am my brother's keeper. And then we also say, and we got this straight from St. Benedict's Prep, whatever helps my brother helps me, and whatever hurts my brother hurts me. And that's how we end our morning assembly. And we do that every day. And we're a 4-day-a-week school. So Monday through Thursday, we do that. And on Tuesdays, they'll hear a chapel message. But we have 5 manhood traits, and each week we'll focus on one trait. And so we talk about like how a crossover man rejects passivity, a crossover man accepts responsibility, a crossover man loves sacrificially, they lead courageously and glorifies God. And so we focus on and there's definitions tied to all of that. And ninth grade is the key year for all of our young men and our young women because that's the year you cross over into manhood or womanhood. And so this year is our first year to have crossover women. So we have ninth grade girls now for the first time. And so they're doing a pearl project where they have to do different things to earn 31 pearls. And that comes from the Proverbs 31 woman. And so just different things from attendance to grades to community service projects. And so once they earn those 31 pearls and complete that, they will be crossover women. And then our young men in ninth grade, they do a 30-mile plus backpacking trip. And it's a student-led trip up in Northwest Arkansas. And yeah, it's crazy because they're going up and down and crossing a bunch of streams and stuff. And it's one of those deals where we've lost, particularly our young men, they've lost rites of passage into manhood. You know, if I were to ask either one of you, at what point did you know you became a man? You know, like we know we're men now because we all got gray hair, but it's like, when did you become a man? You know?
Yep.
And we've created that because almost every other culture has that. Like you became a man when you did this thing or you did that. And so for our students, it's like you become a crossover man when you complete the manhood hike. And then we say, now that you're a man, the question is, what kind of man are you going to be? You know, you're going to be a crossover man. And so just this year, we've added being a man in good standing. And so there's things you have to do to keep that good standing. So we want all of our young men to get a driver's license, you know, by the time that they're juniors, and they have to work a part-time job before they graduate. And in their senior year, they have to present to the school their 5-year plan. So this is what they're going to do next, and this is where they want to be. And that's for them to graduate in good standing as a crossover man.
Pretty
Amazing.
amazing, right,
Yeah.
Nike?
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, it's really. I think back to a prior episode, Ian, where we were talking about Kendi at Boston University receiving $50 million for DEI and producing nothing. And here's a man with his colleagues transforming young people in the most beautiful ways. And I doubt he's collected $50 million to date.
Well,
I
by
know we've
God's
got another
grace,
question, but
yeah.
brother,
I will
please
say
make
this
sure
though, by
before.
God's grace, we did raise 24 million for the community center. So
There you go.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But we could use 50 to have an endowment. So yeah.
And Philip, I mean, just on that topic, how do people, I mean, obviously they can Google one of your organizations, but how do people donate? How do people get involved?
Yeah, so we have you can go to Crossover Community Impact. No, it's crossoverimpact.org is our website. So crossoverimpact.org. We have several different websites, but that one can get you to any of the different entities and all the stuff that we're doing. But yeah, and if anyone's in the Tulsa area, we love giving tours and showing
Yep.
the ministry area because it is cool. Like we bring people to convocation, and there's something really cool about seeing, you know, a group of young ladies or a group of men engaging together in this stuff. There's a powerful visual, and I know a lot of stuff. You know, we're not there yet. We're still working and all of those things, but it is exciting. It's like when you see it all come together, it's a beautiful
Yep.
thing. And yeah, I can't think of anything else I'd rather do in my life. I tell our church this all the time. Like yeah, I love what I do, and I'm thankful that God's allowed me to be a part of it. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, and I've spoken to students. I mean, these young women, they talk about what it means, wearing their pearls, to be a crossover women or woman, and the young men same. Well, then, Philip, let's close asking you. You're actually one of the few people that probably does have this conversation every day,
All
because
right.
we like to ask our guests. Nike and I started this 30 plus years ago. The Invisible
Cool.
Men, in the aftermath of the Rodney King beating, and the narrative that Black men are this endangered species living in this oppressive society. And we envisioned this 16-year-old Black kid, Daryl, living in forgotten USA, hearing this message over and over and over again. And, maybe a Daryl could be in North Tulsa, and thankfully your Daryls have a place that they could go to. Um, but I want to end with what advice would you give to the Daryl not who doesn't have the benefit of having a crossover, in his immediate access? What advice would you give him as Daryl is 16, trying to build his vision of what his life can be?
Right, right. I mean, you know, the pastor in me would say you need the Lord, and I would commend a relationship with God and just talk to him about what that means, what that looks like, because that just changes the trajectory of your life. And that's why, you know, I appreciate your free acronym for agency and all of that. But it's like if you're seeking to walk in obedience to the Lord, you don't have to worry about family formation that way, you know, because you're gonna wait till you get married. before you even start having sex. And so then you're going to have kids. And so you'll follow that success sequence just by trying to follow the Lord. And then it's like, if you know that God wants you to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And so you're not going to be, selfish. You're going to look at, how can I help those around me? How can I help my community? How can I be a blessing, to others? And then you're going to take your education seriously, because you're called to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And so it's like, man, he's created me to think and to know things. And so you'll take seriously this whole idea of glorifying God in everything you do. And so for me, I would point Daryl to him. And then knowing that whatever life throws at you, like, God's got your back. And not this kind of, the white guys, white people are out to get you, this and that. It's like, no, you follow the Lord and everything's going to fall into place. And so that's what my advice to Daryl would be. And even pointing out just all the folks that's like, when you execute in life, especially as a young Black man, there people will bend over backwards to help you. And I tell them, I tell our guys that it's like, hey, if you do things well, people will bend over backwards to help you. And so that would be
That's been
my
my
advice to
experience.
Daryl.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
didn't want to cut you off, but just that
No,
was
no,
such a
you're good.
powerful point. And there
Yeah.
are so many people that have been over backwards for me, and I had to give an amen to that.
Yeah.
Philip, you are an inspiration. I was so proud to meet you, and then have an honor to be at the celebration in Tulsa, and just want to
Uh,
big up your work, man. Just
yeah.
big up your
Well,
work. So,
well, thank you. Thank you. And the honor is all mine. I've been a fan of your work ever since I saw you on the Glenn Lowry show. And so it's cool to see, guys, good message and doing the work. And it's like, we need more people doing the work. So, yeah.
we need more people doing the work. I love it. I love it. Well, Philip, thank you. For our listeners, this has been another episode of The Invisible Men. If you want to catch all episodes, you can go to www.invisible.men. We're also on every podcast platform. With that, Nique, as always, great to see you. And Philip, thanks again.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for having me. You guys have a blessed one.